I stared at the custom-made Welcome Baby Mia banner, wondering if the rose gold lettering was a mistake. Elise, my sister, had always preferred understated designs, but lately, our mother seemed determined to elevate everything. The banner was one thing, the invoice from the party planner in my hand was another. Just one more reminder that I should have said no to organizing this baby shower. I'm Rowan. I've spent the last 15 years proving that you can have a successful career and still care about your family. Spoiler alert, my mother, Celia, still doesn't believe it. The caterer called, said Kaya, my assistant/lifesaver, appearing beside me with her ever-present clipboard. They're running 20 minutes late. Of course they are. I checked my watch, resisting the urge to respond to the work email glaring at me from my phone. Did you confirm the flower arrangements? Kaya nodded. All set. But, your mom called again. She wants to rearrange the seating chart. Something about putting Elise's college friends closer to the front. I closed my eyes, silently counting to 10. The chart we finalized 3 days ago, the one she approved? Kaya gave me a sympathetic squeeze on the shoulder. Want me to tell her no? No, I'll handle it. I sighed and dialed my mother's number. 1 ring, 2. Rowan, darling. Celia's voice was sugary sweet, always a warning sign. I was just thinking about the seating. Mother, I interrupted, keeping my tone even. We can't change it now. The place cards are printed and the tables are set. But Elise specifically requested. Elise approved the arrangement last week, I said, watching the venue staff carefully position crystal centerpieces that cost more than my first car. Remember? During the family dinner. Oh, you mean the dinner you left early for that conference call? Celia's voice was sharp now, her signature guilt trip arriving right on schedule. That call secured the Jennings account, I replied evenly. It's helping pay for this shower you're micromanaging. Always about work with you, isn't it? She sighed dramatically. Your sister is having a baby, Rowan. A baby. Would it kill you to focus on family for once? The venue manager waved frantically from across the room, clearly dealing with another crisis. Mother, I need to go. The seating stays as is. I hung up before she could protest. Kaya was already waiting with her eyebrows raised. Let me guess. The usual? Mother being mother, I replied, straightening my blazer. What's wrong now? The dessert table's lighting isn't ethereal enough, apparently. Kaya rolled her eyes, following me toward the frazzled manager. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Elise. Mom says you're being difficult about the seating. Why can't you just help make my day perfect? Perfect. Like the straight A's that were never enough. Like the promotion that meant nothing because I missed Sunday dinner. Like this $40,000 baby shower that still somehow fell short. The lights are fine, I told the manager firmly, glancing at the soft, glowing setup around the dessert table. If anything, we'll adjust the camera settings for the photos. It's not worth stressing over. My phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from Herbert, the family lawyer. Rowan, your mother's on my other line. Something about the venue contract and last-minute changes? I pinched the bridge of my nose. Tell her any changes now mean extra charges. Significant ones. She says money isn't an issue. Of course not. It's not her money. I watched yet another delivery arrive, this time hand-painted party favors Elise had insisted on. I felt a twinge of guilt knowing I'd hunted down the artist myself and handled the exorbitant cost. Just hold her off, Herbert, I said with a sigh. We're hours away from the event. I will. And, Rowan? Herbert's voice softened. You're doing a wonderful job. Don't let anyone tell you differently. I ended the call, but the familiar ache in my chest lingered. It was the same feeling I'd had when I was 12, and Celia gushed over Elise's piano recital while forgetting my debate championship. Or when she dismissed my business degree as cold and calculating, even as I helped pay for Elise's art classes. Hey, Kaya said, her voice cutting through my thoughts. You okay? Fine. I straightened a stack of place cards unnecessarily, just wondering why I keep trying to prove myself to people who already made up their minds about me. Because you're Rowan, Kaya said simply. You never give up, even when you should. The caterers finally arrived, bustling past with trays of hors d'oeuvres. I jumped into action, directing them toward the kitchen while Kaya coordinated their setup. My phone buzzed yet again, this time a text from Aunt Maeve. Your mother's on the warpath. Brace yourself, dear. And remember, you're worth more than their approval. I scanned the venue, taking in the thousands of little details I'd orchestrated while juggling client meetings and project deadlines. In a few hours, this room would fill with guests, and Elise would have her perfect baby shower, and I would smile, nod, and pretend the snide comments didn't sting. Just like always. The shower was in full swing when my phone vibrated for the 10th time. A client crisis needed immediate attention. Ducking behind a decorative screen, I kept my voice low. Yes, I understand the urgency, I whispered. I can review the contract in 20 minutes. Rowan! Celia's voice sliced through the party chatter like a knife. What are you doing back there? I ended the call abruptly and turned to see her glaring at me. Just checking on the gift arrangements. Always with that phone, she snapped, grabbing my arm and steering me toward the crowd. Your sister is about to open presents. Surely your precious work can wait. Elise sat in the ornate chair I'd specially ordered for her, surrounded by glowing guests. Her pregnant radiance was amplified by the professional lighting I'd painstakingly arranged. Not that anyone would notice that detail. There you are, she said, flashing a strained smile. I was starting to think you disappeared. Just managing a few details, I replied, taking my seat beside her. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Celia hovering nearby like a hawk. Details, details, Celia sighed loudly enough for everyone to hear. That's all Rowan thinks about these days. Numbers and contracts instead of family. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. I felt my cheeks burn but maintained my smile. Let's focus on the presents, shall we? I suggested, hoping to steer the conversation. Elise began unwrapping gifts, each one met with a chorus of oohs and ahs. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed discreetly in my lap, 3 missed calls from the client. Oh, this one's from Rowan, Elise announced, lifting a meticulously wrapped package. My stomach nodded. I'd spent weeks hunting down a vintage silver rattle identical to the one in our grandmother's baby photos. Elise tore through the paper, revealing the velvet box inside. She opened it slowly, her smile faltering. Oh, it's nice. It's just like Grandma Margaret's, isn't it? I tried to ignore the lump forming in my throat. Yes, I said quickly. Remember how she always told us about... Speaking of remembering, Celia interjected smoothly. Remember when Rowan missed Elise's college graduation because of a crucial meeting? The room went silent. Elise's husband, Brian, shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. Mother, that was years ago, I said quietly. And I flew in the next day. And now here we are, Celia exclaimed, cutting me off, at Elise's baby shower, where you can't even put your phone down for an hour. Celia, Aunt Maeve warned from across the room. But Celia wasn't finished. Do you know who arranged this entire shower? She asked the crowd, her voice dripping with drama. Your mother did, while Rowan was too busy with her career to help. I stared at her, stunned. Mother, I planned every... Oh, sure, Elise sniffled, her voice cracking with hormonal tears. You wrote some checks, threw money at it, like always. But where were you for the late-night calls about color schemes? The menu tastings? I was on those calls. My voice rose despite myself. I scheduled them around your timeline. Ladies, Brian tried to intervene, but Celia silenced him with a glare that could freeze hell. You know what? I stood, grabbing my purse. Yes, this call is more important, because unlike this shower, which I planned, paid for, and am apparently getting 0 credit for, this call actually matters to people who value my time and effort. Gasps rippled through the room. Celia's face turned purple. How dare you, she sputtered, after everything we've done for you. Everything you've done for me? I laughed bitterly. Please enlighten me. Was it the constant criticism, the comparisons to Elise, the guilt trips? Rowan. Kaya appeared at my elbow, her expression tense. Maybe we should step outside. No need. I squared my shoulders, channeling every ounce of boardroom confidence I could muster. I'm leaving. Enjoy the shower, Elise. The venue's paid through 7. Try not to let Mother convince you I ruined this too. I turned and walked out, legs trembling but head held high. Behind me, I heard Celia's theatrical sobs and Elise's hiccuping tears. Just before the door closed, Aunt Maeve's clear voice rang out, "Well, Celia, I hope you're satisfied. You've finally done it." I made it to my car before the tears came, but as I sat there, watching the chaos unfold through the venue's windows, a strange calm settled over me. My phone buzzed again, but this time, instead of anxiety, I felt something different. Resolve. I sat in my car for exactly 3 minutes, gripping the steering wheel and staring at the string of angry messages lighting up my phone. Each buzz was a reminder of the chaos I'd left behind. Then something shifted inside me. It wasn't anger anymore. It was resolve. I unlocked my phone and made the first call. "Herbert," I said, my voice steady. "Remember that contingency plan we discussed? The one you said I'd never use?" There was a pause. "What happened in there?" "They finally pushed too far." I glanced back at the venue where delivery vans were still unloading. "I need you to execute Plan B. All of it." "Cora." He hesitated, his tone cautious. "Are you sure? This will—" "They think I just write checks, Herbert. Let's show them exactly what that means." After hanging up, I dialed the venue manager. "Sarah? About those payment arrangements we discussed." "Yes, Miss Grant," she replied quickly. "Everything's set up as requested. Should I?" "Yes. Implement all changes effective immediately." My phone buzzed again, a text from Kaya. Holy crap. They're still going at it. "Elise is crying about how you've abandoned her, and your mom is holding court like a martyred queen." I typed back a quick reply. "Give it 20 minutes. Next, I called the catering company, followed by the bartender, the photographer, and the entertainment service. Each conversation was brief, professional, and devastatingly efficient. By the time I finished, Herbert had texted me. "Everything's in place." "You're really doing this?" "They wanted to talk about money," I replied. "So let's talk about money." I was halfway to the spa I'd booked for the afternoon when Aunt Maeve's number popped up on my screen. I rolled down my window as she approached my car, her expression a mix of worry and curiosity. "Rowan, whatever you're planning," she started, leaning against my door. "How bad is it in there?" "How bad?" I echoed with a wry smile. "Mother's turned it into a full-blown Greek tragedy. Elise is convinced I've ruined her life, and Brian looks like he'd rather disappear." "Perfect." I glanced at my watch. "In about 10 minutes, they'll have something real to cry about." Maeve's eyes narrowed. "What did you do?" "Nothing they didn't ask for." I showed her my phone, scrolling through the emails and contracts. "Mother always said I was good with numbers. Time to prove her right." Her eyes widened as she scanned the screen. "Oh my God, Rowan, it's perfectly legal." "Every last detail," I said, starting the engine. "All the contracts, all the payments, they're in my name." She straightened, folding her arms. "And now?" "Now," I said with a grin. "They can handle it themselves." "Where are you going?" Maeve called as I pulled out of the parking lot. "The spa." I smiled. "I have a massage booked. After all, I paid for it." As I stepped into the spa's serene lobby, the receptionist greeted me warmly. "Welcome, Miss Grant. Your private suite is ready." "Thank you." I handed her my phone. "Could you hold this for me? I'm expecting some calls I'd rather not take." "Of course." She smiled. "Would you like to see our wine list?" "Please." I followed her to the relaxation suite, where the distant sound of waterfalls was the only noise. The chaos I'd left behind already felt like a distant memory. When I finally emerged from my massage 2 hours later, the receptionist handed back my phone with a sympathetic look. You've been quite popular. 37 missed calls. Let me guess, I said, scrolling through the messages. None of them pleasant? The last one was loud, she admitted. The voicemails were as expected. Elise sobbing, Brian apologizing, and Celia screeching about financial terrorism. My mother's shrill voice echoed through the final message. Rowan Elizabeth Grant, you answer this phone right now. The venue is demanding payment for everything. Elise's friends had to pay for their own drinks. The photographer left with the pictures. The caterers packed up the food. What have you done? I deleted it with a satisfied smile and dialed Kaya. You absolute legend, she answered on the first ring. I wish you could have seen it. Your mom tried to pull the "Do you know who I am" card with the venue manager. Sarah just kept showing her the contracts with your signature. And Elise. Crying, obviously, but get this. Her college friends bailed when they got stuck with the bar tab. Real friendship test right there. I accepted a glass of infused water from the spa attendant and leaned back in the lounge chair. Any other casualties? Those designer cupcakes your mom bragged about arranging, packed up and gone right as she was showing them off to her church friends? Beautiful timing, I murmured. My phone buzzed with another call. Herbert. Rowan, he said without preamble. Your mother's threatening legal action. For what? I asked dryly. I paid for everything. Exactly, and you had every right to withdraw services. She's grasping at straws. Let her grasp, I said, inspecting my freshly manicured nails. What's the final damage? Well, Herbert cleared his throat. Between the remaining venue fees, bar tabs, the photographer's cancellation fee, and catering costs, nearly $290,000. I let out a low whistle. And they'll have to cover it? Unless someone bails them out, he said carefully. Which doesn't seem likely. Your mother's credit cards are maxed out, so are Elise's. Not my problem, I said, sipping my water. He hesitated. Brian's been reasonable. He offered to work out a payment plan. Decline it, I said, standing. They wanted to handle things without me, so let them. Kaya texted me a few minutes later. Your mom just tried to put everything on her credit card. It got declined. Elise's friends are leaving. This is better than Netflix. I laughed softly, putting my phone down. The lesson wasn't just financial. It was about understanding the value of my time and effort, something my family had taken for granted for years. As I walked out into the evening air, I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time, I wasn't carrying their weight anymore. Monday morning arrived like any other. I walked into my office with a latte in hand and a fresh sense of clarity. My assistant, Sandra, greeted me at the door with her usual efficiency. Morning, Rowan. Coffee's on your desk, and here's today's agenda, she said, holding out a neatly printed list. Then she hesitated. Oh, and your mother called the office 6 times. Of course she did. I didn't even look up from the agenda. Any other calls? The Thompson contract is signed, the merger meeting is at 2, and... Sandra trailed off before adding reluctantly, Elise's husband stopped by. He said he wanted to talk business. I raised an eyebrow, taking a sip of my coffee. Franklin came here. I told him you were in meetings all day. Sandra handed me a folder as my office phone started ringing. That's probably your mother again. Let it ring, I said, breezing past her to my desk. Just as I settled into my chair, Kaya burst in with her signature enthusiasm, carrying 2 coffees. Tell me everything. How was the spa? Did you sleep? Have you checked social media yet? One question at a time, Kaya, I said, logging into my computer. The spa was perfect. I slept like a baby. And no, I haven't checked social media. Oh, but you should, she grinned mischievously, pulling out her phone. Your mom's church friends are having a meltdown in their Facebook group. Apparently you've destroyed the sanctity of baby showers. Tragic. I couldn't help but laugh. Tragic indeed. Kaya scrolled further, then gasped. Wait. Elise posted another crying selfie. The caption? When your own sister betrays you on your special day. 3 crying emojis. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Aunt Maeve's name popped up on the screen. "Emergency family meeting tonight," she announced without a greeting. "Your mother's trying to rally the troops against you." "Good luck with that," I replied, checking my calendar. "Most of them owe me money, too." "Franklin's been asking questions about the business side of things," Maeve added, her tone skeptical. "Has he?" I asked, pulling up my banking app. "Interesting timing, considering Elise's credit card payment is due today." "That's not all," Maeve said, lowering her voice. "Your mother's been calling everyone she knows, trying to refinance her house." Kaya looked up sharply from her phone. "Oh my God, you have to see this." She held out her screen, showing a series of comments. "Elise's college friends are trashing your mom in the event group chat. Apparently the cash bar and surprise bills didn't go over well." I couldn't help but smirk. Sounds like they're learning a thing or two about our family dynamics. The intercom buzzed. Sandra's voice came through. "Your sister is on all 3 lines now." "I'm in meetings all day," I said dryly, turning back to Kaya. "What about the family meeting tonight?" Kaya snorted. "Let me guess. They'll accuse you of abandoning family again." "Exactly." I stood, straightening my blazer. "But this time, I'm abandoning being their personal bank. There's a difference." That evening, as I settled into my apartment with a glass of wine and takeout, my phone buzzed nonstop with updates from Maeve. "Celia's furious," she wrote. "She's claiming you've turned your back on family." "No," I replied, typing slowly. "I've turned my back on being treated like an ATM." Social media was still buzzing with fallout from the baby shower. Elise's friends had shared photos of the event, captioning them with scathing remarks about the chaos. The cash bar incident was particularly popular. One even posted a screenshot of Celia's declined credit card receipt captioned, "Do you know who I am? Apparently, someone with bad credit." Kaya texted, "Iconic. I hope you framed that moment in your mind." I set my phone down, shaking my head with a small smile. They'd underestimated me. They thought my money and effort would always be there, no matter how they treated me. Now they were learning otherwise. The following week, Franklin showed up at my office again. This time, I let him in. He looked tired. His usually polished appearance was replaced with wrinkled clothes and dark circles under his eyes. "Rowan," he started, sitting awkwardly in the chair across from my desk. "Thank you for seeing me." "You've got 2 minutes," I said, crossing my arms. "What do you want?" "Elise is a mess," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "She's having panic attacks about the baby's nursery. We can't get approved for new credit cards. Your mother is, well, you know how she is." "Sounds rough," I replied evenly, not offering any sympathy. He nodded, clearly expecting that. "Look, we know we messed up. I should have spoken up at the shower. We all took you for granted." "That's one way to put it." He hesitated before pulling out his phone. "She's your sister, Rowan. Whatever happened—" "You mean when you all publicly humiliated me? Or when you dismissed years of support like it was nothing? Or when you called me cold and calculating while happily spending my money?" Franklin winced. "We were wrong." "No," I corrected him. "You were comfortable taking and taking while giving nothing but criticism in return." I stood, walking to the window. "How's that working out for you?" "Not great," he admitted quietly. "The baby's due in 4 months and we're—" He trailed off, looking at his phone. "Your mother's house is in pre-foreclosure." "She has options," I replied coolly. "She can sell her handbags, her timeshare, or call all those real family people she loves to compare me to." "Rowan, please," he said, almost pleading. "What will it take to fix this?" I turned back to face him. "Fix what, exactly? The relationship none of you ever valued? The support you all took for granted? Or the success you resented?" His shoulders slumped as his phone buzzed. I could see the caller ID, Celia. He ignored it. "You should go," I said, motioning toward the door. "Sounds like they need you." "No," he replied softly. "They need you. But I get it now. You're done. And they're scared." Without another word, he left. From my office window, I watched him join Celia and Elise in the parking lot. They huddled together, their heads bent in conversation, likely plotting their next attempt at reconciliation. My phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Maeve. "They're breaking, dear. The question is, are you ready for what happens when they do?" I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the baby registry website where Elise had listed all her wishes. The vintage silver rattle sat in my cart, along with every other item on the list. One click would solve all their problems. I closed the browser. Some lessons cost more than money, and this one wasn't finished teaching yet. The knock on my apartment door came at precisely 9:00 p.m., 2 weeks after the baby shower debacle. I knew who it was before I even checked the peephole. Sure enough, Elise stood there, her hair in a messy bun and wearing the ratty college sweatshirt she'd always refused to throw away. "You look terrible," I said, opening the door. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice quiet. I stepped aside, watching as she shuffled to the couch and sat down, cradling her baby bump like it was the only thing grounding her. "Mom doesn't know I'm here," she said after a moment. "Of course she does," I replied dryly. "She's probably waiting in the car." "No," Elise said, meeting my eyes. "I mean it. I took an Uber. Franklin's at a partner meeting trying to save his job." I stayed standing, arms crossed. "What do you want, Elise?" She pulled a folder from her bag, placing it on the coffee table with trembling hands. I found the receipts from the shower, all of them. Mom had thrown them away, but I needed to know. Her voice cracked as she continued. "It came to $47,000, and that's not even counting the gifts you bought, the ones you spent months picking out." I didn't respond, letting the silence fill the room. Finally, I asked, "Is this the part where I'm supposed to feel appreciated because you finally looked at the price tag?" "No," Elise said, shaking her head. "This is the part where I tell you I'm scared. Really scared. We can't afford anything for the baby. My credit cards are maxed. Franklin's firm is putting him on probation. And Mom's losing the house." "Sounds rough," I said flatly, not moving from my spot. "I deserve that," she whispered. Then, almost as if she was forcing herself, she pulled out her phone. "But look at this. Really look." She swiped through photos from the shower. Pictures of the custom lighting, the hand-calligraphed place cards, the flowers arranged to perfection. Every detail I'd obsessed over was captured in those images. She looked at them, then back at me, her eyes welling with tears. "You did all this," she said, her voice barely audible, "while closing the Thompson deal, while handling a merger, and I had the nerve to complain about you missing tastings." I finally sat down across from her. "Your point?" "My point is," she said, struggling to her feet, "I've always been jealous of you, always. You make everything look so easy. Your career, your success. Even this. Throwing the perfect baby shower seemed effortless for you." "It wasn't," I said sharply. "It never has been." "I know that now," Elise said, walking to the window. She stared out at the city lights, her voice breaking as she added, "Mom's a mess. She's lost everything. Her status, her credit, her reputation. Even the country club revoked her membership. Tragic." "She deserved it," Elise admitted, turning back to face me. "We all did. We treated you like a bank, Rowan, while acting like you weren't good enough to be part of the family. The same family you've been supporting for years." My phone buzzed on the table. A text from Aunt Maeve lit up the screen. Elise finally made the move. "How's it going?" I ignored it and looked at my sister. "Why are you here, Elise?" Her hand rested on her bump as she answered, "Because I'm having a baby, a little girl, and I don't want her growing up thinking it's okay to treat people the way we treated you. I don't want her learning that success should be punished or that money matters more than honesty." "Pretty words," I said, raising an eyebrow. "What do you want from me?" "I'm not asking for money," she said firmly, stepping closer. "I'm asking for a chance to be a better sister, to be better for my daughter." "And Mom?" I asked, my tone colder than I intended. "She'll have to figure out her own way back, if there even is one." I studied her face, taking in the dark circles under her eyes and the worry lines that hadn't been there before. She looked older, worn down by her choices. Finally, I asked, "Do you know why I chose the silver rattle?" She blinked, caught off guard. "No. Grandma Margaret used it to soothe us both when we were babies," I said, my voice softening despite myself. "Remember how she'd tell us the story about how it was the only thing that could calm you down during thunderstorms?" Elise's eyes filled with tears. I didn't even look at it properly. I was too busy trying to hurt you. "Well," I said, leaning back, "it worked." "I'm so sorry, Rowan," she said, her voice trembling. "For everything. For years of everything." She reached for my hand, and for a moment, I let her hold it before pulling away. "Sorry doesn't fix credit scores," I said simply. "I know." She moved toward the door, her shoulders slumped. "But maybe it's a start." Just as she reached for the handle, I spoke. "The rattle's still in my closet." She turned, hope flickering in her eyes. "Does that mean—" "I'm not saying I forgive you," I interrupted, "but maybe we can talk. About the baby. About starting over. Maybe." Elise nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Thank you." After she left, I picked up my phone and texted Aunt Maeve. "Elise just left. She came alone. Maybe there's hope for one bridge not to burn completely," Maeve replied almost immediately. "And Celia?" I stared at the family photo on my shelf, taken long before success meant anything, and family meant everything. The people in that picture didn't exist anymore. "Some bridges need to stay ashes," I typed back. The silver rattle glinted in the morning light, its soft chime breaking the quiet. My niece's tiny fingers wrapped around it instinctively, her curious eyes mirroring Elise's, but without the weight of history. "She hasn't cried once since you gave it to her," Elise said from the hospital bed. "The nurses can't believe it. Grandma Margaret was right. It really is magic." I adjusted the baby's blanket, marveling at the serene little bundle cradled in Elise's arms. "I'm glad it's working for her." Franklin entered, balancing 2 cups of coffee, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in months. "I brought caffeine," he announced quietly, careful not to wake the baby. "Thanks," Elise said with a tired smile. "How's the lobby?" He glanced at me, lowering his voice. "Your mother's down there again. Security's keeping her in check." I sipped my coffee, unbothered. "Your call." Elise hesitated. "She's been trying to convince the nurses she has a right to see Margaret. Something about grandmother's rights." She shook her head. "I told them she's not on the approved visitor list." My phone buzzed on the table, a text from Aunt Maeve. "Celia's making quite the scene downstairs. Something about being banned from meeting her granddaughter. Should I run interference?" "Let her make it," I replied, watching my niece's chest rise and fall with each tiny breath. "Some people would rather cling to their pride than choose peace," I said softly. Elise nodded, adjusting Margaret's blanket. "She could be here right now," she whispered. "All she had to do was get help." "She's made her choice," I said simply, "and it's not our problem anymore." Franklin sat on the edge of the hospital bed, taking a long sip of his coffee. "The past few months have been eye-opening. We've had to reevaluate everything." "And?" I asked, arching an eyebrow. "And you were right," he admitted. "We took advantage of you. For years, we didn't realize how much you were holding us all together until you stopped." Elise reached for my hand tentatively. "The trust fund you set up, for Margaret, it's more than we could have ever hoped for. But I want you to know we'll follow the rules. No contact with Mom until she completes therapy. No access to the money without financial counseling. And separate holidays," I added. Elise gave a sad smile. "No more forced family gatherings. Agreed." The baby stirred, letting out one of those tiny noises only newborns can make. Franklin pulled out his phone to take a picture, then showed me the screen. It was a photo of Celia pacing in the lobby, gesturing wildly at hospital staff. "She'll never change," Elise said softly. No, I agreed, taking another sip of coffee. But we did. Later that day, my phone buzzed with updates from the family group chat I'd muted weeks ago. Cousin Rachel had posted, "Celia's claiming she was wrongfully banned from the hospital." "Should we tell her that's not how restraining orders work?" Uncle Paul chimed in. "Maybe she should have thought about that before threatening Rowan at her office." Aunt Maeve added, "The therapy appointments are paid for. She's choosing not to go. That's on her." I muted the chat again, focusing instead on Margaret. She had Elise's nose, Franklin's chin, and, thankfully, none of our family's penchant for manipulation. She was, for lack of a better word, perfect. "I've been thinking about names," Elise said, breaking the silence. "Please tell me you're not still considering Celia Jr., I replied, half teasing. Elise laughed softly. "No, Franklin and we were thinking Margaret, after Grandma." The rattle chimed softly as the baby shifted in her sleep. "She'd like that," I said after a pause. Elise hesitated. "We want you to be her godmother." I blinked, caught off guard. "You're sure? I might be too busy with my cold, calculating career." "That's why we want you," Franklin said, his voice steady. "Someone has to teach her that success isn't a character flaw." Before I could respond, a commotion erupted outside the door. Celia's voice carried through the hallway, demanding to see her granddaughter. Security stepped in quickly, their calm responses contrasting sharply with her shrill protests. From the window, we watched as they escorted her out of the hospital, her knockoff designer bag swinging wildly as she waved her arms. "You know what's sad?" Elise said, holding Margaret closer. "She could be here right now." I nodded. All she had to do was change. "And she won't," Elise said quietly. "No," I agreed, looking at the tiny baby in her arms. "But that's not our burden anymore." My phone buzzed again. Herbert this time. "Celia's threatening to contest the restraining order. Again." "Let her," I typed back. "Some battles aren't worth winning when you've already won the war." Elise touched my arm. "Thank you. Not just for the trust fund or the baby stuff. For giving me a chance to be better." "Us," Franklin corrected, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "A chance for us to be better." Margaret yawned, oblivious to the storm of family drama swirling around her. She was the embodiment of a fresh start, a new beginning untainted by the past. "Want to hold her again?" Elise asked. I took my niece carefully, feeling her warm, tiny weight settle against my chest. The rattle chimed softly as I rocked her, the sound light and soothing. "You know," I said, watching Margaret's eyelids flutter closed. "Grandma Margaret used to say something about family, that it's not about whose blood and who isn't. It's about who stays when the money's gone and the masks come off." Franklin nodded thoughtfully. "She sounds wise." "She was," I said, smiling softly, "and she'd be proud of us. Not for the success or the money, but for finally learning what real family means." Outside, Celia's car peeled out of the hospital parking lot, leaving behind tire marks and a wake of wounded pride. But inside this quiet room, with the silver rattle catching the sunlight and the promise of a better future cradled in my arms, we had everything we needed. Sometimes, the family you choose is better than the family you're born into, and sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well, loving better, and finally letting go. Story 2. I was 7 years old when it all started. My family led a tranquil, predictable existence and was typical. While my mother, Sophia, balanced a part-time job and domestic responsibilities, my younger brother Ethan and I spent our days playing in the backyard. Dad Adrian frequently arrived home late from his lengthy workdays. He was more like a passing shadow. Before that day, life was easy. From the front door, I recall hearing my mother's voice beckoning me frantically. "Chloe, come on over here. This is something you must hear." She was radiant. She was holding Ethan's hands tightly. I sprinted over to her. I'm curious, yet perplexed. She dropped on her knees. She hardly controlled her eagerness. "Your sibling?" "Is a musical genius," she replied, her voice faltering. He has excellent pitch, according to his instructor. Are you aware of how uncommon that is? Her passion was contagious, even if I didn't entirely comprehend. From then on, everything was different. Everything in our existence revolved around Ethan's piano classes. In order to devote herself fully to his developing skill, Mom resigned her work, converting our house into a little studio with a piano, sheet music stores, and microphones. She put all of her effort into organizing his calendar, which included both weekend events and everyday classes. Ethan flourished under her tutelage, and everyone who heard him was moved by his lovely, pure voice. Before long, he was becoming well known outside of our tiny town and winning local competitions. Mom was overjoyed. Every time she talked about him, her pride was evident. "My Ethan will become a famous person," she would say. Dreams of his future were flashing in her eyes. However, I felt like I was receding into the background while Ethan starred Rose. Once split between us, Mom's attention now seemed to be exclusively for him. My accomplishments, a good test score, and a diligently drawn picture were greeted with brief, preoccupied praise. She kept returning her attention to Ethan. Dad, however, continued to be aloof. He was too worn out from his lengthy workdays to participate in the increasingly complicated affairs of our home. He sat quietly in front of the TV or hid himself in the garage when he was at home. He appeared happy to let Mom take care of everything, including our widening gap. I was able to support myself by the time I reached 10. I learned not to look to my parents for approval, cooked my own food, and finished my schoolwork by myself. I began to carry the pain of neglect in silence, turning to literature and my trips to Grandma Helen's bakery for solace. Grandma, in contrast to Mom, thought of me as Chloe, not simply Ethan's sibling. "My darling, you're resilient and observant." As she was showing me how to knead dough, she would say, "Don't allow someone to diminish your significance." As Ethan reveled in his mother's full attention, her words turned into a lifeline. I held on to the little affirmations that made me feel good about myself. I had no idea that the silent power I was developing would one day help me overcome obstacles much bigger than I could have ever imagined. The distance between my world and Ethan's expanded like a chasm as I got older. As I moved through life in silence behind his shadow, he was the golden kid, lavished with opportunity and acclaim. Ethan, his lessons, his performances, and his future were the center of Mom's existence. I became the one who could handle things on her own and handle me, the afterthought. I turned to books as a haven and a way to escape the constant comparison. I lose myself in tales of tenacity and adventure, seeing worlds far different from mine. I found a small group of friends at school who provided me with the companionship I didn't have at home. We laughed and spoke about our dreams with them in the park or the library throughout the afternoons. Instead of being continuously eclipsed by the genius of others, I felt like an equal. Ethan and I had radically different treatment as I traveled to our neighborhood school via public bus. Ethan was driven to a prominent school known for its music curriculum. Mom packed delicious lunches, fussed over his outfit, and frequently went with Dad to make sure he had all he needed for me. There were only quick farewells and reminders to get home on time, no such customs. However, Grandma Helen and her charming bakery on Maple Street saved my bacon. I'd go there every day after school. The aroma of freshly baked bread and pastries envelops me like a cozy embrace. There is my diligent worker. My grandmother would welcome me. Her kind grin was a comfort to my tired heart. It was more than a chore to assist her. It turned into something to be proud of. During peak hours, I would take over the cash register, wipe the counters, and set up the display. I felt appreciated for the first time, for my own efforts, not for the accomplishments of others. "Chloe, you're a natural." Grandma's eyes would sparkle as she spoke. "Without you, this business wouldn't function half as well." I was unaware of the depth of the gap that her words filled. Grandma considered my independence as a strength, whereas my mother saw it as a convenience. She gave me a little salary, which I carefully saved since I knew I would eventually need it for something significant. Her support and faith in me were the only things that prevented me from completely fading into oblivion. Ethan, meanwhile, flourished in the limelight. His name frequently appeared in local publications, and he played at recitals that attracted sizable audiences. Mom put his prizes on full display. Every word she spoke about him was laced with pride. Greatness is in his destiny. As if the rest of us were merely bystanders to his journey, she would frequently say. Even though I applauded Ethan during his performances, I couldn't help but feel jealous. I felt like I was being forgotten, even though it wasn't his fault. A supporting role in another person's narrative. But during the quiet times at Grandma's bakery, I started to understand that my value was independent of other people's opinions. I was gradually coming to establish my own course. As Ethan's success kept growing, our family's dynamics underwent a radical change. We had lost what little equilibrium we had. Ethan's career, his practices, competitions, and the never-ending barrage of auditions and interviews took up Mom's every waking moment. Music coaches, photographers, and fans flocked to our house to watch the prodigy in action, turning it into a center of activity. Even though I was invisible, I was there. Only when it was absolutely necessary was my presence acknowledged. Without hesitation, Mom threw her money and energy into Ethan's success. She arranged for private lessons, accompanied him to music festivals, and made sure he always had the greatest gear and attire for his performances. Everything else, even my little victories, seemed insignificant to her. When I told her about an award I received at school, or proudly displayed an essay I had worked hard on, her answers were aloof, almost robotic. "That's good, Chloe. Good for you." She would say so before hurriedly leaving to attend to Ethan's next important function. Even Dad, who had always kept his distance, now seemed to find solace in focusing on Ethan's growing fame. He rarely spoke to me beyond the occasional house school, and was more often than not absorbed in work or the television. The little recognition I'd once received from him faded entirely, as he too succumbed to the gravitational pull of Ethan's talent at school. I maintained good grades and even joined the debate club, hoping to find a space where I could shine in my own right. Yet at home, my achievements felt meaningless. The family's conversations revolved around Ethan's upcoming auditions and the possibility of him attending a world-renowned music academy. My efforts to be seen to matter fell flat against the ever-growing wall of their expectations for Ethan. I still helped at Grandma's bakery, where I felt a flicker of purpose. "You're doing great, Chloe," Grandma would tell me as we kneaded dough together, but even her affirmations couldn't completely drown out the feeling of being sidelined. The distance between Ethan and myself wasn't simply about attention. It was a chasm formed by our parents' decisions, one that left me battling with my place in a household that seemed to have room for just one star. Ethan auditioned for the famous National Youth Choir, was the event that appeared to convert our family into a pressure cooker. Mom was pleased when the invitation arrived, a handwritten note from the choir's director, no less. She could not contain her enthusiasm, waving the letter about as though it were a golden ticket. "This is Ethan's opportunity," she remarked. "And chance like this might start him on the path to international success." Her delight was short-lasted, though, as we gathered around the kitchen table that evening discussing Ethan's trip to New York. The bills gradually mounted up. Flights, hotel accommodations, new performance clothes, and costs for the audition itself. "It'll be tight," Mom conceded, her voice laced with dread. "But we'll manage." Dad's face grew serious. "Leah, we're already overburdened," he stated in a stern yet hushed voice. "We cannot continue to spend down our savings in this manner." Mom yelled, "This is for Ethan's future. Why even hesitate?" It was not the end of their fight. I heard their muffled conversations coming from behind their closed bedroom door that night as I was getting ready for bed. I drew nearer, listening intently. Not much has been saved for Chloe's college education. Dad stated it was clear he was frustrated. "What should we do if she asks for our assistance?" Mom retorted, "She's resourceful. Chloe is going to work things out. She does it every time." It hurt to hear those remarks. I silently retreated from the door as a knot formed in my throat. Ethan wasn't the only thing that came first. It was the belief that I wasn't deserving of, or in need of, the same degree of assistance. Resolved to disprove them, I immediately started saving for college. I started putting every dollar into a little ceramic piggy bank that Grandma had given me years prior, after she promised to pay me a fair rate for my assistance at the bakery. Regardless of my parents' support, or lack thereof, every penny and every crinkled bell seemed like a step toward safeguarding my future. The stress at home continued for months. Even though Denise Ethan wowed the judges at his audition, the financial burden had an impact. I keep my piggy bank tucked away in a closet corner and make an effort to remain goal-focused. I made the decision to check my funds one day after I got back from Grandma's bakery. I was curious to see how much I had amassed. However, I felt uneasy when I took up the piggy bank. It weighed far less than it ought to have. I shook it, my pulse racing, but instead of the frenetic clatter of money, I heard a spooky quiet. My worst suspicions were validated when I busted it open. It was deserted. I sat there in shock, feeling a wave of betrayal and incredulity. Who was able to accept it? My first thought was of my mother. Had she stolen my money to pay for Ethan's audition? My stomach turned at the notion. That night, my voice trembling with rage, I faced her. "Did you steal my funds, Mom?" Before acknowledging that it was for Ethan's vacation, she hesitated for an excessive amount of time, and her face gave away. "We had no other option, Chloe. I was stolen from by you." I spoke in a hurtful tone that was just above a whisper. "Stop being so dramatic," she yelled. "It's all for Ethan's future and the family. You'll comprehend eventually." However, I didn't comprehend. I only experienced the piercing pain of betrayal. Without my permission, my hard-earned funds and any remaining faith in my parents had been stolen. The decisions made by my family weighed heavily on me that night, as I sat by myself in my room, leaving a deep ache in its wake. It was a sad day when I received my acceptance letter to college. I had obtained a partial scholarship and been accepted to the public university to study economics. Even yet, receiving the scholarship seemed like a win. It was not comprehensive. Living expenses, textbooks, and tuition were still factors to take into account. One evening after supper, I went up to my parents, determined to make things work. "Mom? Dad?" I started to grip the letter firmly. "I've received a state university acceptance. Although I received a scholarship, I will require assistance to cover the remaining expenses." Dad looked over the edge of his newspaper at me. He scowled. "That's fantastic news, Chloe," he remarked, but his voice seemed unenthusiastic. "It's tight right now, but you know." "Tight?" With a sinking heart, I echoed. "Mom, what about the money you saved for my college education?" Occupied with cleaning the table, scarcely raised his head. "The majority of that is used in Ethan's music school. Chloe, you'll have to work it out. You're resourceful." Despite the usual hurt of their remarks, I was able to nod stiffly and excuse myself. I laid in bed later that night, feeling a deep pain of disappointment. Any expectation of financial assistance from them was obviously pointless. I didn't give up, though. I even got a part-time job at the college cafeteria and took on extra shifts at my grandmother's bakery. I put every dollar I made toward my mounting list of bills. Grandma did everything she could to help me. Her constant support was a lifeline. "Chloe, you're going to succeed." With conviction, she would say. My mother unexpectedly showed up at my apartment a few months into my first semester. Her hands were wringing uneasily, and she appeared nervous. "I need your help, Chloe," she said. Her voice wavered. "I need to borrow some money because of an emergency." After some hesitation, I gave in and moved a sizable amount of my savings to her account. She told me it's for something significant. "I'll reimburse you as soon as I can." As the weeks went by, the cost of tuition and rent began to drain my bank account. Mom's tone changed when I asked her for repayment. "It's family money, Chloe." Disregardfully, she said, "Ethan's future demands sacrifices, and you're not in immediate need." She said something that was like a slap. At that moment, I recognized that the emergency had been another of Ethan's musical endeavors. I was deeply hurt by the betrayal, and for the first time, I felt a burning rage inside of me. Grandma encouraged me to get legal counsel. She said firmly, "Chloe, this isn't just about the money. It's about advocating for oneself." Armed with text messages and bank statements that amply demonstrated Mom's dishonesty, I filed a case. They were bizarre court proceedings. In months, for the first time, I turned to face Mom. She had an angry and defiant look on her face. Ethan avoided looking at me as he sat quietly in the back. As soon as my lawyer presented the evidence, Mom's made-up account of a family emergency came to an end. The judge gave me a favorable ruling, directing Mom to pay my legal fees and return the money plus interest. I had won, but it didn't feel real. The consequences were severe and quick. Mom portrayed herself as a victim on social media. An unappreciative daughter betrays her mother. I was inundated with angry and disappointed messages from relatives who had only heard her side of the story. "You have brought shame to our family." One aunt gave a reprimand. "How could you do this to your mother?" Despite the backlash, I stood firm. Grandma's unwavering support kept me grounded. Her voice served as a continual reminder that I made the correct decision. Let them talk. She'd say the truth will always come out in the end. Though the familial bonds were shattered, I felt a newfound strength. I had fought for myself and my future, and no amount of criticism could take that away. Several weeks after the court ruling, I received an unexpected call from Dad. His voice, hesitant yet heartfelt, shocked me. "Chloe, may we talk?" he asked. "I've read your mother's posts, but I want to hear your side of the tale." We met at a little cafe near my flat. The discussion difficult at first. Slowly, I recounted everything throughout the years of feeling disregarded, the sacrifices I'd made, and the treachery that led to legal action. Dad listened quietly. His face darkened with remorse. "I failed you," he said, his voice husky. "I felt supplying financially was enough, but I neglected what was occurring at home. I let your mother take the reins, and I understand now how much you've suffered because of it." His remarks evoked a combination of emotions, fury, despair, but also a gleam of hope. For the first time, Dad wasn't distant. He was there, acknowledging the anguish I had held for so long. Dad started looking into the family's finances because he was determined to set things right. We were both astonished by what he discovered. For many years, Mom had been transferring money out of their joint account to support Ethan's interests, while ignoring household bills and even taking out loans in both of their names. He shook his head and remarked, "I should have paid more attention." I had complete faith in her. He was enraged, yet determined by the realization. In an effort to start again and provide me with the kind of support he had never provided before, he filed for divorce. Dad's apologies and acts signaled the start of our reconciliation, even if they didn't change the past. I felt like I had a parent who genuinely cared for me for the first time in years. We started working together to re-establish the connection we had both desired but had never known how to achieve. Our family's already shaky roots were rocked by the sudden revelation of Ethan's voice impairment. He strained his voice too far during a concert on top of a cold mountain, which caused a serious illness in his throat. Even with the greatest medical attention, the harm could not be undone. Ethan was no longer able to sing. Mom's entire world fell apart. Her son, on whom she had centered her whole existence, had become less brilliant. Mom hid herself in her room the day the doctors verified Ethan's illness, and there was a spooky silence in the house. She became unidentifiable, confused, and muttering about unrealized potential and dashed hopes over the next few weeks. Her neighbors asked for assistance one evening when her sorrow erupted into frenzy. After being diagnosed with a serious nervous breakdown, she was taken to a mental health facility. Ethan spent months in a depressive state due to his sadness and remorse. He distanced himself from everyone and used beer to numb his suffering. Dad and I made an agonizingly slow effort to draw him out of the shadows. Ethan finally started to come out of the shadows following months of treatment and recovery groups. "I can no longer sing, but I can still teach," he stated one day over coffee. "Without the pressure I had, perhaps I can assist others discover their passion for music." I noticed a glimmer of purpose in his eyes for the first time in years. After enrolling in a teaching program, Ethan went on to teach choir at a nearby school. "This is my second chance," he said quietly, resolutely. Despite the unexpected turn in life, Ethan's path to recovery provided a feeling of closure. His salvation demonstrated that one may get back up and start over, even after falling. In retrospect, I can see how our family's divisions molded each of us. By inspiring people to embrace music without the burden of expectations, Ethan discovered a purpose beyond celebrity. Dad took charge and became the encouraging father I had always wanted. Despite being damaged, even Mom started the mending process. For my part, I carved myself a path based on self-worth and resilience after discovering my own abilities. I learned from life's hardships that suffering frequently leads to development, and even if the scars are still there, they serve as a reminder of my progress. Ultimately, I come out stronger, smarter, and more prepared to take on whatever is ahead.